Hey guys, Uncommon Ramen here. I wanted to take a look at Clank in Space Apocalypse, which is the first expansion to Clank in Space. This one adds 2 more board tiles as well as 35 new cards and some schemes which help expand the game and give it some replay value. We'll take a look at those components as well as go over what they kind of do for the game. I do think that the schemes is a clever way to kind of add replay value to this game, as if the modular board itself hadn't already done that. And with these 2 new modules for the board, you have a total, I believe, of 10 modules to choose from, although they do suggest that you should use at least one of the new modules if you do plan on using the schemes, just simply because the schemes do reference the modules several times. So I figure we should take a look at the modules first. They are both double-sided, just like the originals, and because of that we will be receiving 4 new modules. This one is the Viral Lab, and then we have the Portal Chamber. And then on this side we have the hangar, as well as the mainframe. So as I mentioned before, with these 2 new added boards, on top of the original 3, we have a total of 10 new modules that you can add to the ship. And, as I mentioned earlier as well, we add these schemes to the game as well. The schemes are going to utilize the black cubes that would normally just be set aside, making it, in my opinion, a little bit harder to play the game. So if you've already played the game several times and you think the game might be a little too easy to go through, or your group of friends just happens to be, I don't know, the advanced players that need a little bit of an extra challenge, these will do that. Because now drawing black cubes from the bag is kind of still bad. While it isn't damaging you, it is still advancing something that will, in the long run, damage you, especially once you get to the 3rd part of these schemes. So we'll take a quick look at all these schemes, and then I'll kind of go over the dichotomy of the card. First we have Atmosphere Theft. Then we have Global Internment, Homicidal AI, Interdimensional Monsters, the Microbot Army, Space Invasion, Time Travel Paradox, Toxigenic Plague, and we're back to the Atmosphere Theft. So we'll go over this really quickly. Atmosphere Theft is obviously the name, and then underneath the name you'll see a Category 2 scheme. Category 2 is the second hardest by definition of Renegade games. I'm not 100% sure how they came up with how these categories work, but essentially what they tell you in the new rules is that if you are just starting out, you should probably start with a Category 1 scheme, just simply because it's supposedly a little bit easier to play with that. Underneath that, you'll have the flavor text and the art, and then underneath that, you'll have a way that you, as a player, can interact with this scheme card to try and keep these schemes from coming into full fruition. In this particular case, Sabotage Jump, you can spend 2 skill points to take a black cube. And what it means by take a black cube is literally just take a black cube off of this mat. So each of these schemes has 3 phases, and each phase will have a set number of cubes that need to go on here before it can be a completed phase and move on to the next phase. In this particular case, it needs 5 black cubes, and once it's reached that level of 5 black cubes, you're going to remove unclaimed power crystals from the game. And those of you who have played the game know that the power crystals kind of help you with certain cards and augmentation, as well as a couple other interesting things throughout the game. Once that that phase of the scheme has been completed, it'll move on to phase 2, and the phase 1 cubes can no longer be messed with. So if you spend 2 skill points while phase 2 has no cubes on it, but phase 1 has all 5 cubes, you still can't touch it because we're no longer in phase 1. We're now in phase 2. So utilizing this to kind of slow down how the phases kind of move into each other is actually really important. And like I said, each one of these has a scheme rating, and each one of them will have different things like, for instance, this one is rearrange the modules, move each module clockwise one position around the board. Each one of these is supposed to kind of throw you off or slow you down, especially if you go down to here where we're extracting oxygen. The first move each turn generates no movement at all. Sorry, first boot each movement. So these things can be extremely detrimental. In this case, as long as this scheme has been completed successfully, you're going to be pulling +1 cube per boss attack, which can get really deadly, especially if you are later in the game. So the schemes not only add some difficulty, but they give you, I guess, some use for the black cubes other than just kind of setting them aside. And more importantly, it adds more expandability to this game, because now in future expansions, they can add, 1 or 2 new schemes, and even actually add higher difficulty schemes if they wanted to. So now on top of having the modular board with, the 2-sided sections, you can have these new schemes, and you greatly expand the game in general. So I think that's really very interesting. You are also given a little meeple dude, and as per my luck, mine came busted, so I'm gonna have to give Renegade Games an email and find out if I can get a replacement, but that is kind of my luck. His arm is broken off. But this guy is supposed to represent the homicidal AI, which you can use to replace the Erraticus meeple on the board for level of anger, I guess, because he does integrate himself with that character. And then along with it, it came with 35 new adventure cards, I suppose is what they're called. And these cards are anything that you can add to your deck, as well as enemies that you have to fight. And some of them have interesting new abilities that interact with the black cubes, like, for instance, the Alien Invader here. When you defeat him, you can take a credit, or you can take a black cube. And I think that's pretty cool, because that, again, allows you that extra interaction with the black cubes that originally just wasn't there. So we'll go over these really quickly. We have the Imprisoned Savant, who, when he shows up, you're going to get a boss attack. When you play him, you'll go ahead and get to draw a card, and when you acquire him, you're going to gain 2 Clank. But he is worth 4 victory points, just to keep in mind. Then we have the Imprisoned Inventor, the War Machine, the Psychic Pool, the Fry All 9000, and if you look right there, you can see when you take these cubes, they don't just go to waste. There's actually quite a few different uses that you can use with these cubes, one of which being on cards that indicate as such. So in this case, if you do get rid of a cube, you will get 5 fight as opposed to the original just 1 fight, which is really a kind of cool concept. On top of that, there are different modules that have interactable spaces with cubes, and more importantly, if you end up holding on to black cubes at the end of the game, they're each worth 1 point as well. So it's kind of like a little booster to help you get a little bit further ahead, especially if you think the game is really close. When you do spend cubes, however, they go back into the bag, just like if Clank were to go into the bag as well. And so there is a possibility for those cubes to come back, which could be good in the sense that It allows you to continue receiving black cubes, but it could also be bad in the sense that if the scheme is fully completed, you can no longer interact with these cubes, so the black cubes will get set aside as per usual, and you can no longer get them. So it's just something to keep in mind as you're playing the game. Decide when it's best to buy cubes and when it's best to kind of just let the game go on. But that's just little tidbits there, and we'll go over that when I go through the rules real quick. Photonic Doctor, Insurgent's Hack, and here's another one where when it arrives, you remove a black cube from the bag and put it on the scheme. Not great, but when you acquire it, you get to take a black cube, so it's a double-edged sword, I guess. Young Telepath, Water Bear, another one of those. Here you get to use a black cube and teleport. VR Gamer. This one, if you get rid of 2 black cubes, you get 10 credits, which is incredible because the cubes alone are only worth 1 victory point at the end of the game, whereas you get 1 victory point for every credit you have. So you're basically ditching two victory points for 10 victory points. Vigilante Technician, Shrewd Coder, Shady Opportunist, Pigeonholed Actor, Memory Architect, Mega Feline, Heroic Sheriff, Grizzled Survivor, Fringe Scientist, Embedded Operative, Crazed Anarchist, Clone Crew, which is a really interesting card because it gives you an opportunity to kind of activate any of these abilities should you have played or play something of any of these factions, or you happen to have the Power Crystal, which I thought was really cool. Gives you some options. Cleaner Bot, Android Concierge, Amnesiac Agent, Telepad Sentry, Labor Camp Warden, Gerda, Cocoon Creature, and Alien Invader. And like I said, they all have very interesting things to add to the game. Really quickly, take a look over here. The rules are going to tell you exactly how the schemes work. So if we look over here, it's going to basically go over how adding the black cubes goes on the schemes and everything, and then how interacting with the black cubes works, and exactly what the purpose of these black cubes are, as well as what happens to the black cubes when you spend them, and more importantly, what happens to the black cubes when the scheme is completed. Should you choose not to deal with the apocalypse, which is these schemes, I mean, you don't have to, but it will make the game a lot more difficult, or maybe even not a lot more, but just it will make the game more difficult. But should you choose not to use the schemes at all, there is a way to do so. Here you got Apocalypse Later, and it essentially is just saying that instead of just setting the black cubes aside, you'll set them into a communal pool that you can spend 3 skill points to buy from. Therefore, you can still interact with the different modules that have black cubes on them, as well as the cards that reference them. And then, of course, a little cheat sheet about all the data ports that are going to be around the modules so that you can hack them. And I'll take a look. I'll show you really quick modules here where we're talking about the black cubes. Like for instance, right here, if you land in here, you can spend a black cube to get 3 credits, and then here you can spend the black cube to get 2 cards. And they all kind of have something like that. Here we got 3 credits and -3 Clank. Here you can just spend it to get one of the power crystals, and then 3 credits again. And then on this side, HP and 3 credits. So there's a bunch of different ways to use these, and so if you choose to play with the expansion as well as the modules for the ship, then but choose not to use the scheme, there's still a way to use these cards without having it just be wasted spaces, I guess. And that really is Clank and Space Apocalypse. I was going to talk about all the different references they have here, like Invader Zim right here, and you can tell that just by reading his text, but his shirt and pants and shape of his head, everything is Invader Zim there. And of course there's a ton of references here that I just didn't catch. I'm not sure what Cocoon Creature is referencing, but like the day the Earth stood still for Gerda, Portal for the Telepad Sentry, Wally for Cleanerbot. I want to say this is a Harry Potter reference, but I'm not really sure. And I don't know if this is supposed to be like a Back to the Future reference or something else, but who knows. Wanted to go through all those, but then I kind of got lazy, I guess. The Sea Bear, or Water Bear, which is a reference to that microbe or bacteria or whatever that can basically live through anything, including the deep freeze of space. V for Vendetta, I want to say. This one I kind of reminds me of Minority Report. Maybe Mad Max? But yeah, that is Clank and Space Apocalypse. I think that's it. Feel free to leave any comments. Maybe you recognize some of the references that I don't. Maybe I was wrong about some of those references, which is not surprising. Maybe you have some more things that you would like to explain or have questions. I always enjoy your comments, and I try to reply to them as soon as possible. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe. I am very close to that 100 mark and can't wait to get there. So please support me. And until next time, guys, peace.